Hello, welcome back to IELTS tutorial video. In this video, I will try to explain and how to solve the problem in the reading test that relates to the question type true, false, and not given, or something quite similar to that. It's a yes, no, and no information. I've heard that many of students as well, and especially you're out there, the IELTS test takers who probably you study independently, having a big problem in these two types of the question test. This is because the information sometimes is very hard to find. The true false and not given is actually quite similar to yes, no, and our information. But the difference is that true false and not given tends to be more facts, in which yes, no, and information is try to find whether someone's opinion does exactly what's being told in the test. So in both type, you're required to confirm whether a statement is exactly stated, you know, on the reading that's on the text, or it is against something in the text, or probably is not mentioned at all. And many people got confused because they just don't understand how to try to find the information on the text. Well, before I will start to explain deeper about this, you need to understand that IELTS basically is the academic setting test. So everything that you need to understand about IELTS is all about paraphrasing. You can check on the listening test, especially that's on the writing test as well, that everything is based on the paraphrasing. So you need to understand that when you take IELTS, actually you are measured about the ability for you to paraphrase words in English. And therefore, sometimes IELTS can be a little bit tricky or more challenging compared to TOEFL because in IELTS you're expected to understand many different wording of the paraphrased phrases. So that's the basic point that you need to understand. Well, now we will go deeper into yes, no, and no information, or true, false, and not given. But uh, in here, actually, I just take it from the IELTS Cambridge. That's the Cambridge IELTS the 8th, and then that's the second test. In here, you can understand that the important thing for reading is the first, you need to read all of the paragraphs, but when you read, you need to pinpoint several important information. You don't need to understand every word, and you don't need to go in details, but the more important thing, you need to understand what is the function of each paragraph. It is to inform, to debate, to propose, or to negotiate. You need to understand that. And therefore, I want you to go with me at the moment to understand this passage. Is a sheet glass manufacture and float process. So the important thing here is that when you are given the test, you need to build your mental state using the title. So when you read the title, sheet glass manufacture, the float process, here you need to understand how you can predict, what it's all about. If there's a sheet glass manufacturer, so what goes in your mind, it should be manufacturing. It's about the glass, or maybe about the cost. It can be about the technique. It can be about the experiments. It can be about the people who invented it. Many different things, but all related to manufacture of the glass. So that's the mental state that you need to have. Now, I want you to go deeper to the first paragraph. I want you to read very carefully. Then I will try to tell you what to do next. I give you time for about 2 minutes. I want you to read through only the first paragraph. Okay. Well, after you read through just only the first paragraph, you begin to understand that this is all about the glass. Okay, that's for sure. And then after that, you can find very important information that's about, the ingredients of the glass. Then you find also that the glass is heated in 1,500 degrees Celsius. It becomes a molten mass that hardens when slowly cooled. Then it's always interesting that you need to pinpoint the word first. Be careful because the word first is something unusual and usually it will be asked in the question. So you had better underline the word the first. Successful method for making clear flat glass. So clear flat glass as well should be underlined and involves spinning. So in here we can understand that this is the method. And it says that very effective. Why this is very effective? Because the glass does not touch any surfaces between being soft and becoming hard. Then it says that it's unblemished with a fire finished. However, it takes a long time and was labor intensive. So this is exactly what you have to do with your paragraph when you are taking the real IELTS test. I just want you to underline a word that's very very important. So in here, when I ask you a question, what does the writer want? The purpose of the writing of this paragraph, and the answer is surely to give information about the spinning method, which is very effective, but then it's very lengthy and also labor intensive, and that's exactly something that is not very good, but also there is a positive and a negativity. So you know whenever you need an information about the first method, the glass, or everything about the process that people understood, we refer to the first paragraph. So I'm going to do the rest with other paragraphs as well, but then I want to give you time for 2 minutes to read the second paragraph. Well, okay, 2 minutes passed. So we look at the second paragraph. It says that the demand for flat glass was very high. Okay, so this is quite interesting. It's very high, and then the glassmakers across the world were looking for a method of making it continuously. So looking for a method is very interesting. Then we find here the first continuous ribbon process. Again, the word first is quite unique, so you have to underline that. The first continuous ribbon process involves squeezing molten glass through two hot rollers, similar to an old mangle. This allowed glass of virtually any thickness to be made non-stop. This is very very interesting, but both sides of the glass marked. Then it need to be ground and polished. This part of the process robbed away about 20% of the glass, and the machine were very expensive. So again, this is about another process, but it has a positive and negatives as well. And before I forget, it's very important for you to sort of like alphabetize your paragraph. So this is paragraph A, and this is B. Just to give you a way to search information faster. And this one is C, and this one is D, and this one is E, and this one is F, this one is G, and this one is H. Okay. Well, now let's yes, we go to the third, which is actually C paragraph. I'll give you time for 2 minutes to read. Okay, now we will see this is about the float process and making the flat glass, and it's by Alistair Pilkington. This process allows the manufacture of clear tinted coated glass either for building and then for vehicles. W. Kington had been experimenting with improving the melting process. Okay, so he experimented, and then in 1952, this is the use of bed of molten metal to form flat glass. Then what happens? It eliminates the need for rollers within the float bath. Then we see that there are two temperature references that you need to understand, and the best metal for the job was actually tin. So that's for C. Now let's go to the fourth paragraph. I'll give you time for 2 minutes to read through. Okay, and here we need to understand that this is simply the rest of the process that been talked about in the previous paragraphs, and this is perfectly flat and horizontal. Consequently, when pouring molten glass onto the molten tin, the underside of the glass would also perfectly flat. This is very important for you to understand this. And if the glass were kept hot enough, it will flow over the molten tin until the top surface is also flat, horizontal, and perfectly parallel to the bottom surface. Once the glass cooled to 604 degrees Celsius or less, it was too hard to mark and could be transported out of the cooling zone by rollers. The glass settled to a thickness of 6 millimeters because of surface tension interaction between the glass and the tin. By fortunate coincidence, 60% of the flat glass market at the time, that's about 6 millimeter blast. So as you can see here, we've tried to underline words and also phrases that considered very important to define what the paragraph is all about. Okay, let's go on to E now. I'll give you time for 2 minutes. Okay, well, in paragraph E, you can understand that Pilkington built a pilot plant in this year, but then 1955 convinced the company build a full-scale plant. The interesting thing is that it took for so long. It is not just an instant success, then costing the company 100,000 a month before the plant produced any usable glass. Then they say that the machine was turned off for a service to prepare it for use to continuous production. When it started up again, it took another 4 months to get the process right again. They finally succeeded in 1959. So imagine that 1953 to 1959, there are now float plants all over the world. Then is around 1,000 tons of glass every day, non-stop for around 15 years. Okay, then that's something considered very, very important. They're all underlined in E. And now let's go to F. So I will give you another 2 minutes. Okay. Well, that's very interesting because it is a manufacturing process actually. So float plants today make a glass of near optical quality. So we see melting, refining, homogenizing take place simultaneously in 2,000 tons of molten glass in the furnace. And it says that it occurred in separate zones in a complex glass flow driven by high temperatures. It adds up to a continuous melting process lasting as long as 50 hours, but that delivers glass smoothly adds continuously to the float bath. And then that go to a coating zone, then finally heat treatment zone where stresses form during cooling are relieved. So that's very important. So that's all about F. And now let's go to G and H that's at the same time. I give you 2 minutes. Well, okay. Now let's see that on G, in G we see that the principle of float glass actually is still the same since the 1950s, and the thickness is always something that is interesting. So the product has changed dramatically. So the product's changed, but not the principle. Then we'll be able to see how they try to take away the flaws by having the sort of like automatic inspection technology in here, more than 100 million measurements a second to be made across the ribbon. And here we have interesting statement, unaided eye. Okay, so that's human eye that cannot really do the job, and therefore we need machine to do it. And this one. And then float glass is sold by square meters, and at final stage, computer transferred customer requirements into patterns of cuts and designed to minimize waste. So if you try to see the whole process of underlining is actually a very creative process. Try to find the information, which one is the main idea, which one is supporting idea, what is the real intention of the writer. So it's a very interesting for us to see this process. And it will take a little time for you to get yourself accustomed to this technique, but this is just the way you can do the reading test that you can reach a very good point. I'm talking here, I'm not talking about the shortcuts, uh, ways that probably tend to be more popular, but not necessarily something that you will need when you're in the university. So the tutorial video that I give you is all the technique that you will find it very handy, and it help you a lot when you try to do your your further study, because when you're in a university you have to read fast, but at the same time you need to understand, to absorb, to really digest the essence of the information, and that's exactly how you have to do, and you want to know more about the essence of a paragraph or of an article. Okay, well, after we finish the phase number one, which actually we need to underline important words in the passage, you have to practice that so you can do it fast. Now let's go to true, false, and not given. Number nine, the metal used in the float process had to have specific properties. In here, we can see that the metal used in the float process have to have specific properties. So there should be a requirement for the metal used. When you check, that's the first paragraph telling us about the process is actually paragraph C. If you read it through, the float process for making flat glass was invented by Alistair Pilkington. This process allowed manufacture of clear tinted coated glass for buildings and clear antinted glass for vehicles. Pilkington had been experimenting with improving melting process, and in 1952 had the idea of using a bit molten metal to form flat glass and that eliminate the float bath. We haven't found the information yet. The metal had to melt at a temperature less than the hardening point of glass, but could not boil the temperature below the temperature of the molten glass. The best metal for the job was tin. Here we see that are requirements, the important thing that need to be done with the float process. But in fact, the best metal for the job was tin. So it gives us an information that this is about the certain properties and certain requirements need to be fulfilled first. So by having uh, read this, we understand that it has a several special properties that we need to fulfill, and therefore the information is actually in line, and that makes the answer here true. And then take a look at the Next, Pilkington invested some of his own money in his float plan. In here, we refer to the paragraph that talks about the money, in which in here we find the information £100,000 a month. Then we can see that the cost in the company, but when we read it carefully, we don't know where the money is from. It's Pilkington built a pilot plan in this year and that year, but we don't know where does the money come from. It can be his own money or it can be somebody's money as well, maybe the investor. We don't know. So in this case, it is not wrong, the statement stated in the, that's in the problem, but we just don't know it. And therefore, the answer for this is not given. So do you understand? If not given, we cannot find that information. There is amount of money, but we don't know where the money is from. So we cannot really, suggest where's the money from. So it's all not given. Now 11, Bill Kingston's first full-scale plan was an instant commercial success. In here, full-scale plan, which is the first, an instant commercial success. Then let's see what happened in the paragraph. Pilkington built a pilot plan project that's in here, 1953. But it says this, that they finally succeeded in 1959. So this is clear that it is not an instant success. So what it stated in the text, in the problem, is actually against the information given in the text. And therefore, the answer is finally false. So this is false. Now, next. The process invented by Pilkington has now been improved. Is invented, then improved. Now let's see. We find the process there is actually in the here in G. The principle of float glass is unchanged. However, the product has changed. The product has changed means sort of like, that's the paraphrase for changed. And it say it has changed dramatically. And here you can see that from a single thickness to arranged. So there is something more. And it says that optical perfections. Perfection is in improvement. So that's in line. And therefore, the answer is true. The process invented by Pilkington has now been improved. True. Because now it can do more range and then more to optical perfections. And then the last note, computers are better than humans at detecting faults in glass. Well, be careful with the word human here. We can check faults with actually this paragraph. It says the flaws, so that's a paraphrase. Locating flaws, inspection technology allows inspection technology. So it is not a human eye, it is not human being, it's a technology allows more than 100 million measurements a second to be made across a ribbon. Locating flaws, the unaided eye, which is actually the human eye, will be unable to see. So this is in line with the text. So the information in the text is actually in line, and therefore the answer is true. So you need to remember that in doing true, false, and not given, you have to understand the power of paraphrasing the keywords. When you can paraphrase a keyword, you can find that's in the information that it should be, that's in the reading, then you will understand whether the statement in the test is actually the problem in the test, is in line, is against, or it is not informed. In line true against not false, not informed is actually not given.